How's it going, everyone? Today's project is a tune-up on a Honda with a GCV160 engine. Has a Quadric Cut System, as most of these Hondas do. Self-propel with a smart drive system. And the customer says it does run, and asked me to just do a basic tune-up. So here we are in the garage today. We're going to show you how to do a basic tune-up on one of these Honda mowers. First thing I'm going to do is just do a function test. Make sure it runs and the self-propel and everything works. So I'll check to see if it has any oil in it first. And there is, and it looks perfect. I'll check the fuel. I don't see any fuel in there, so I'll have to put some fuel in. It looks like the fuel valve is left in the open position, which scares me. If they, unless they ran it out of gas in the fall. That means whatever fuel was left in it is sitting in the carburetor all winter. So we'll see what the carburetor looks like as well. So I'm going to set you up. I'll do a function test. So it started up pretty good. I'm just going to let the oil warm up so that I can drain it more easily, but it sounds like it's running really well. So I let the engine run for about 5 minutes. The oil's all warmed up now. I'm going to start off by just draining the oil. And there's no elegant way to do this, really. I'm going to just back you up a little. I have a little more room. And I just got to sort of, I don't know what was in there, but some jug I cut down. And this one's not so bad. Some of them are a little bit more of a pain in the butt. I'll let that drain out for a bit and I'll work on the blades next. Okay, so this has got the Quadric Cut System, which means basically you got 2 blades, and so basically 4 times the cutting. And I think they work pretty good. I do have the spark plug wire off. Anytime you work on the underside here, want to make sure your spark plug wire is off. And this is a 14 mil socket. Alright. So now that I got the blades off, I'm going to go ahead and clean up the bottom side here and spray some oil guard on the bottom side. So I'm just going to use a scraper here, guys. Scrape off the majority of the crud on the underside here, all the old grass. This is the stuff that makes your deck rust on the bottom side here, so once a year you should really clean all this grass off. I'll finish that up and I'll come back when I go to spray it. Alright guys, so there's all the crud that came out of this guy. So last thing I'm going to do is just kind of blow this off with some air, and then I'm going to use some of this rust check oil rust inhibitor spray on the underside, and that will hopefully keep the deck from rusting out. Alright, so there you have it, guys. This is the after now product, and I sprayed it down. Nice little oil guard on there. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is go and sharpen the blades. To sharpen the blades, I do have a video on how I sharpen the blades, guys. You can go ahead and click the link in the top right corner and it'll take you to that video. Alright guys, so we got two freshly sharpened and balanced blades back on the mower. So next thing will be to flip it back over and replace the oil with about 400 milliliters of 10W30 oil. So I'll be doing that next, and we'll see you after. Alright guys, so I just finished putting in about 350 milliliters of oil, and I just wanted to make a note about how you measure the oil on a Honda. It's slightly different from others, and as you can see here in the picture, to actually get an accurate gauge of the amount of oil in a Honda engine, you actually do not screw the dipstick all the way in and check it that way. In fact, all you're supposed to do is just put the dipstick in and just, without tightening it, put it in there and pull it out, and then get a reading off of that. And as you can see, it's right, and as you can see, it's hard to see, but right about sort of halfway up. So I'm going to go ahead and add about 50 milliliters at a time, and until I get it perfect, right to the top of these marks right here. Okay, be right back. Alright guys, so oil's all changed, blades are sharpened. I got her up on the lawnmower stand that I got here, and I'm gonna keep working my way through the tune-up here. The air filter doesn't look so bad. I could probably just blow that out in the grass. I try not to change parts unless I need to, guys. Just doesn't make any sense to throw away a perfectly good usable part. So I'm going to go ahead and take off this housing here and get at the carburetor next. Alright, so I got two 10 mil bolts. And what's going to happen here is the carburetor comes right off as well. Now there's a breather tube here on the back side. Gotta pull that off. Here's a bit of a gasket. Make sure you don't lose this gasket. Okay guys, I got the fuel shut off. Be very careful. There's a plethora of gaskets usually on these Hondas, Kohlers, this one, and you don't want to rip them if you can help it. So I'm going to leave that on just for now. There's a spring, you got a return spring. Sometimes I can do it by hand here, there you go. And then a Z-bend. And just remember which goes where. Z-bend goes on in one closest to you. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is take off this fuel line. Just makes things more difficult when you try and take stuff apart. Alright, there you go. So, like I was saying, there's tons of these gaskets on here that you don't want to have to replace unless you absolutely have to. Alright guys, we're up on the workbench now. I got this carburetor. I'm going to take the float bowl off. It's got a 10 mil nut or bolt on the bottom, I should say. Carb bowl come off. Yeah, I don't really want to mess with these. If it doesn't look like they're going to come off without breaking, I'm just going to leave them. This one looks like it's maybe going to come off. Oh yeah, the one can get away more. Just need to delicate. Trying to save customers money wherever I can. Okay, good. This one, see what I can do with this guy. Get these off, you just easier to work and not have to worry about anything. Just a little bit at a time. Very efficient. Alright, there we go. So those will be reusable. Alright, so bottom side here. Float pin. Float with the needle. And the bottom of this needle has a little rubber tip. So that actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. If there was a ring around the rubber tip, or if there's a little bit of indentation or visible damage, you're going to want to replace that. So now through the center here is where your main jet and your emulsion tube are. Guys, these are brass jets. And you get it out with a flathead screwdriver. Now most flatheads aren't straight like this, so you're gonna have to find one that's straight. If you see, for instance, those two, this one has more of a, I don't know, a taper towards the end, and this one's just straight flat. So you're gonna need something like this. You can take an old screwdriver like this and sort of grind down those wide spots if you so choose, but it's imperative you get one that fits in there as perfect as possible. Now this one, the end is a little bit too wide, so I'm gonna have to try a different one. I got a whole set of these, so this is a narrower tip, I believe, and hopefully they're not in there too tight, because you can strip that flathead on the end of the main jet pretty easily. It's just brass, soft brass. Alright, so after a little finagling, guys, I finally got this main jet and the emulsion tube out. Now, to clean these out, guys, you're just going to use thread tie or a wire from a wire wheel or a wire brush, whatever works. Just want to make sure that all these passageways are nice and clean, and then on the emulsion tube there's lots of these little holes as well. Now mine all look clean. I don't see anything at all. And that would be indicative of the fact that the thing ran pretty good right off the hop. So nothing is blocked here. What I'll end up doing is shooting some carb cleaner through all these holes. And just make sure that they're all nice and clean. And last thing I'm going to do is shoot some carb cleaner through all of the little holes and orifices on the carburetor. So any of the passageways. There is an idle jet. It's probably under this screw, I would think, here. So I'm just going to take off this idle screw. It's the idle adjustment screw, the RPM screw. And I'll take out this screw here. And there is a sort of an idle jet passageway. There might be a jet in there, but it's not removable. I'll just spray a little bit of carb cleaner through that. Make sure that's all cleaned up. And we can put that guy back in. Put our idle adjustment screw back in. Now, you might be wondering, well, Jerry, you didn't mark where it was when you took this idle screw out. So how do you know where to put it back? Well, this throttle lever only goes so far. So I'm just going to hold that and then screw this in till I feel it starting to move, the idle or the throttle butterfly. And right about there. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Alright, so now I'm just going to finish cleaning the rest of this off, put it back together, and we'll see you in a bit. Okay guys, I got the carburetor back on, the fuel lines on, the linkages are back on, and now I'm going to endeavor to put all of this back together. I do have a couple of gaskets here. I'm going to try and line all of this up. In addition, of course, to re-hooking up this breather line. All with just two hands. Put my last gasket on. And I'm going to try and line up the holes first. And then I'm going to get the bolts started and reach in with a pair of needle nose pliers and hook up that vent. That rubber vent line, so that's good. Alright, so now I'm just going to cinch these down. I'm not going to over tighten. Sure. Again, you don't want to over tighten these. Alright, auto choke's still working. Alright, so that's all back together. Next thing I'm going to do is check the spark plug. Looks like I'm going to need an extension. Probably, maybe not. Take a look at the spark plug. If we can reuse a spark plug, I will. I'm not a big fan of changing spark plugs every year, but some guys do, and that's to each their own. I always talk to the customer and ask them firsthand if they want to or not. And that spark plug looks beautiful. I don't know why anyone would ever change this spark plug. I'm just going to clean it up with my wire wheel, make sure the gap is 30 thousandths of an inch, and then I'll come back and reinstall. Alright guys, so here's the spark plug after I cleaned it up on the wire wheel. I mean, that's just a little crud from my hands, but I mean, it looks pretty much brand new again. So I don't know why anyone would change that out. So I got a spark plug gap tool here, and it should be around 30 thousandths. And there you go. If it's maybe goes a little bit past, so I'm just gonna push that in a little bit. Alright, there you go. 30 thousandths of an inch. So it's ready to go back in the machine. You always want to start these by hand first. You never want to cross thread them. If you damage the threads for that spark plug hole, a lot of times you got to replace the whole head of the motor, head gasket and all that. So just start it by hand, guys, and then you don't have to reef on it, just snug. And there we go. The last thing I'm going to do before I clean this guy up is the Starter Recoil. I always lube these guys up, and as you can see, the cord is not actually going back in all the way. A lot of slack in there, so I'm just going to lube that up. Hopefully that'll solve our problem on this Starter Recoil. So the good thing about Hondas is, although they use metric, they pretty much use the same size bolt for everything. So 3 10mm nuts. And here's your Starter Recoil. Alright, so I like to take mine off of the handlebars. As you can see, it's not going back. It's not springing back the way it should. So I don't know if someone's been in here messing with this thing, but or the spring. You can see the spring. I don't know if you can see it on camera here, but the spring right here is pretty rusty. Alright, so I'm going to spray some lubrication in here, guys. Whatever lubrication you have, silicone, whatever, WD-40, whatever you want to use. So I like to spray some right in here where the dogs or paws are. And then I like to get right in there where that spring was, where I showed you guys. Sometimes a little trickier to get in there. Sometimes you can go through the back side like I'm doing right now. And spray a decent amount in there, guys. And then just work it. Sometimes these don't go back all the way because the last person installed too much rope in there. But it's getting better every time now, so I don't think that's the case. Springs back nice. Alright, ready to go back on the machine. I will probably do the wheels here. I'll lubricate these wheels as well. Maybe show you that next. Okay guys, I just got the mower block on a block of wood here. I got a 12mm socket here on my impact. And just spin off the wheel. Now, all you're going to want to do is just clean up this surface right here on your nut. And then just put some sort of lubricant on there of your choice. So I like to use anti-seize. It's a little bit more expensive, but than just regular grease. So you don't need a lot on this, guys. In fact, you don't want to probably put a lot just because the fit is so tight. Put that guy back in there. Get the the bolt started by hand. So that's how you lubricate the wheels on this Honda, guys. I'll do that on the rest of the 3 and we'll come back. Alright guys, so blew out the air filter, blew out the cover of the housing here. I don't think this is a Honda air filter, but it fits in there nice. It's more of a Briggs style filter, but I'm going to reuse that. Save the customer a few bucks. The Honda filters, I think, around 10 bucks. So that'll conclude this video, guys. If you liked the content, maybe you learned something, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out on the channel. And until the next video, take care.